understand. I'm just looking for a friend. Can I see you again?
Isn't this song awesome? This is original music by Maxwell Lee, our guest today on the episode. Maxwell shares the fascinating story of how he overcame his fear of moving abroad to launch a successful Anytime Fitness franchise in Taiwan and Malaysia, all while experiencing a personal musical renaissance. We dive into the realities of enrolling children in local Taiwanese schools, the intricacies of the Taiwan Gold Card for artists, and how he balances the demands of business ownership with his newfound life as a frontman and performer. Welcome to Wonder World School. I'm Susie, a travel-loving money nerd, mom of two, and our family lives between Spain and Colorado. Here we discuss the stories, logistics, and finances of slow and long-term traveling families and the many ways to learn along the way. Don't miss listening until the end to hear another original music score by Maxwell Lee. Welcome to the show, Maxwell. Please tell me more about you and your family.
I'm Maxwell. My wife is named Kelly, and we have two boys, ages 10 and 7. I was born and raised in Florida, but my parents are from Malaysia, so I'm Malaysian, Chinese, American. And then my two boys were also born in Florida, like me. But my wife, Kelly, she's from Macau, and then she moved to Florida when she was 11 or 12. Around that 7th grade. So she was born in Macau, partially raised in Macau, and then raised in Florida like me. So we consider ourselves Floridians. And then we moved around for a bit, and then finally we settled in Taipei a little over 3 years ago. So that's our background, at least geographically. And currently, what we're doing is expanding the Anytime Fitness brand here in Taiwan.
I'm really excited to hear more about that because I think when living other places long-term or traveling long-term, often people want to keep up some of their daily habits, and fitness and activity is one of those. It's great to hear about your experiences with the fitness brand and what that has entailed for your family. So before we jump into all that, though, it's great to hear a little more about like how travel influenced you growing up, or what led to your desire to travel as a family now.
Yeah, I grew up traveling a lot, so I was pretty comfortable with that idea. My parents were both college professors and had the summers off, and so we would go back to Malaysia, their hometown, visit all of their siblings and family. We'd do that pretty often. We would also take trips to other parts of the world, and so summer vacation was pretty typical every year. Sometimes I also played music growing up, so we'd go to like festivals and camps for my music. They were physics professors, so they had science and physics conferences to attend, and they'd bring me along as well for those. I really enjoyed going to new places. Very fortunate to have that experience. But I will say it's different from the idea of moving abroad. That for some reason, my mindset, I had sort of a mental block on that. And I always wanted to kind of move abroad conceptually on paper, but I was afraid to, and I didn't really put any plans in motion to do that throughout my young adulthood, when I really could have done it much more easily. 4.5 years ago, we really were set to make that leap, and I was ready. But I would say, 10, 15 years ago, it would have been much easier for me to make that leap, and I was afraid. Even though I was comfortable traveling abroad, I wasn't comfortable with the idea of settling or really planning roots somewhere else. I think it felt, I don't know, scary, just not very possible. And there's something about it. It's just funny now that I've actually done it. It's not. I don't know why I had this fear before, but that's how it works, I guess.
Well, when people travel, they often do return to whatever
hmm
home base they've
hmm
been at. And so they get these unique experiences, but with the comfort of knowing where they're going to return to.
Right.
And when you leap out into the void and do long-term travel, or you plan to move abroad somewhere, even if it's not forever and ever and ever and ever, it is
hmm
still a little more vulnerable because you're putting down roots somewhere. You're
hmm
creating a home instead of maybe that feeling of passing through. Even if it's slow travel, you're still on the go. I can see how that plays out. And your parents had great jobs for travel growing up, pre-digital nomad, to be able to be on the school schedule and have summer breaks. I've always thought that, now with remote work, it offers up some flexibility. But before that, teachers had the best schedule,
Hmm.
right? To have a built in break for travel. So you've shared that your family launched about 4.5 years ago from the US. Tell me a little more about what those travels have looked like since then. And then I know you've landed in Taipei
Yeah.
now. What has that travel story been like for your family?
It's pretty storybook, I would say. And I was always hesitant to paint too rosy of a picture, but I mean, it's really been exactly what we expected and hoped. We really did the full-time travel piece was not a long time. It was about 8 months, and we spent all of that in North America, a good chunk in Mexico and Puerto Rico, trying to get sort of a different experience, a different language. But then we also spent time in the U.S., basically across the whole country, seeing a lot of friends and family as we prepared to move to Taiwan. We knew we were moving there the whole time. It wasn't like a journey to kind of figure it out. So we tried to concentrate our time in North America and see friends before we were gonna make that move to the other side of the world. So we spent time in Mexico, like a month in Mexico City, a month in Merida, a month in sort of the Cancun, Playa del Carmen area. And I look back on those memories very, very fondly. So do my kids. So we miss certain aspects of that sort of freedom. Once we came to Taipei, which we love, the reason why we're still here is because we love it here. But we've had to exchange some of that freedom that we used to have for the benefits of settling in a community and planting roots and getting to have all the things that come along with being settled in a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits to being in one place longer, and especially if it's somewhere new and you get that mix of travel and new
Mm.
experiences, it can be great. And then to mix it in with some travel beforehand is great because I imagine if you have like a set time frame when you want to be in your new location, it gives you more flexibility to fill that time, like you said, with family and also some more fast travel, knowing that there is an end game. Because usually, if people fast travel at some point, they get a little exhausted and they slow down
Yeah.
anyhow. What about Taipei was the draw? Was there any connection there that you had
Yeah.
from family or friends or just things you had heard about it that led to you deciding that this was the next destination for your family?
Since my wife and I met, we wanted to live in Asia for some time. She was born in Asia, but kind of lost some of that connection, and she wanted to come back. We also still have a good amount of family over in this continent, so we wanted to be closer to them for a period of time. So we talked about it when we first started dating, talked about it before we had our first child. We considered going back to Macau to give birth to our first kid. I'd say every year or two, there was a very serious conversation about moving to Asia. Um, so that was our mindset. Once we had both kids, we really were determined to spend a few years somewhere where they could be immersed in the culture and immersed in the language, whether that's Cantonese, which is my wife's native language, or whether it's Mandarin, which is what we felt was a really important language to have. So we were okay with either one. And we were considering cities across sort of the Chinese diaspora, so Hong Kong, Macau, some places in China, and then Taiwan, Malaysia, where my family's from, and Singapore. These are all countries that we considered. And um, Taipei, in the end, I would say just was the most attractive city across the board. We felt Taipei on balance was the best for a family. We're really big city people. So with the idea that we want to be in a big city, Taipei was very convenient, very affordable, very good access to nature, which is something that you won't necessarily find in a lot of huge metropolitan areas, especially in Asia. Asia has a lot of concrete jungles, but Taipei, in every direction, there's like greenery. It's very easy to get out to hikes within minutes, by transport. We have several different hiking routes that we like. and you kind of feel like you're suddenly in a whole nother world. Oh, you can see the cityscape, but you suddenly feel like the air is fresher somehow, even though you're just a few minutes away from where you were in the
Yeah,
city. But
that
yeah,
sounds magical to have the mix of the 2.
yeah,
The ease of a city life, the public transit, all the conveniences, all the cultural piece, and then also the nature is
yeah,
a great mix if you can combine the 2.
yeah. So yeah, for us, it met all of the things that we were seeking. It was just on the merits of the city as we knew it that we wanted to live there, and we felt it'd be good for our family.
And that is helpful that you have traveled before and you had
Mhm.
those perspectives. Some people launch and they are looking for maybe a place to settle, but they haven't even really experienced a lot of traveling yet. And then for your children, they left when they were much younger. Probably your oldest remembers more of your
Yeah,
long term travels in between the move to
yeah.
Taipei. I'm curious what their thoughts have been through this experience. I think it's great to give voice to what their perspectives are.
My older kid, I don't know how much he's been influenced by his experience, but I will say he considers himself sort of a citizen of the world. He really, really adamantly considers himself Taiwanese, Malaysian, Canadian, because we have a lot of relatives there and we've spent some time there, and American. And Peruvian because of his grandparents, great grandparents who
Yeah,
lived there at one time. So
that's
he
so
really
cool.
like, and he'll like, he'll adamantly state that no, like if you quite try to question or why he feels this way, like no, I really think he really feels it deep in his blood. So I don't know if that's his personality more or his experience as a world school and traveler, but he identifies that way. He also identifies as a world schooler very much. When we first started going, as you mentioned, he was young but still old enough to remember these things. He was I think 5.5. Yeah, close to 6 when we began, and he enjoyed a lot of the experiences, right? I mean, when you're that young and you're traveling and meeting other kids, it's really easy to have fun. So he really fondly remembers those early days in world schooling and likes to reminisce about it. He'll also talk about when or ask when we can like do another sort of world schooling stint where we can travel around. So those are the impressions for him. I think my younger son doesn't remember as much specifically, but I would definitely say he loves traveling, like the most out of anyone in our family. He always wants to know when we're going to go somewhere. And sometimes we'll be coming home from a 1 or 2 month trip, and we come home and we're home for a few days, and then he will say like, oh, he's tired of this hotel now. We don't live in a hotel; we live in an apartment. We've been in the same apartment for over 3 years. So it's our home, and he should know it, but he considers it a temporary like hotel, and like, where's the next hotel? Because he wants to go to another one. So that is definitely left an impression on him. Sort of the traveling bug. I think he'll carry that with him for a while.
Absolutely. I always wonder with raising world citizen children that like to travel, I'm like, "Oh, hopefully when they're older and they end up who knows where around the world, I don't regret showing them so many places." I would say that somewhat facetiously, but I agree. It's great to have kids that love to travel and also kids who like to be settled and kind of in a community as well. And right now that you've been in the community in your home in Taipei for a couple of years, what does schooling look like for your 7 and 10-year-old now?
Yeah, they're in local school here in Taipei. I got residency so that we could enroll them in a public school because that was a big thing for us. We'd much prefer having them in a local school than in a private or international school. So uh, we they began. I think so. My older son began first grade here. That's when we came. Was just as he was starting first grade. And then my younger son was in pre-K for 2 more years. Their experience, the first 3 months, 4 months, I feel like were quite difficult school-wise. We were unable to prepare them for the language barrier. So that is one thing that comes up often. What's your one, like, what would be your regret? And that's actually my biggest regret is not sort of forcing them, essentially, forcing them to get some basic understanding of Mandarin before we came. My wife and I could have helped them with that, and we tried to a few times, and they were just so resistant to learning Mandarin from us before we came to Taiwan that we just let it go because we figured, well, we're going to move there, then they're going to get it. But I really wish I had sort of said, okay, no, we're going to do some lessons. You're going to sit down and just get the basics so that when we move over, you'll be able to make friends quickly. And we didn't do that. And it made the first few months pretty rough. But I'd say by 6 months in, they were totally fine with communicating with friends in school. So there was a little bit of a rough patch. I wish I could have made it more smooth for them. But after 6 months, things have been pretty fine.
Yeah.
Now we're year 4 starting. So it's yeah, things are good.
Thank you for sharing that because sometimes there are challenges, right? Like it's not always sunshine and roses with traveling
Right.
long term, moving abroad. There are going to be hiccups. And, kids we know are very adaptive and there are things we always could do to help prepare them, but sometimes they just learn as they go as well.
Mhm.
And I was going to ask a little more about the language piece because so, what language is spoken in the schools? And then what languages do you speak at home? And has language come up, like other languages that you'd like to pursue? How has that been for your family?
Let's see. I'll go chronologically. We did a little bit of Spanish. So we were in Miami for a while, and their daycare was all Spanish speaking. Growing up, they were surrounded by Spanish, and I have this memory of picking my son up from his daycare, and he was conversing with a girl in Spanish, like sentences. So he had some exposure to Spanish. The younger one also had some, not as much because he was younger. And then we did our world schooling through Mexico, Puerto Rico, like I mentioned. So there was a little bit more exposure. I think we could have been more conscientious about really trying to learn Spanish, but we tried. I mean, we did a little bit. That hasn't stuck though. I mean, there hasn't been a continued practice or use. Besides that, so my wife's native language is Cantonese, and they had a lot of exposure to it from my wife's parents, but somehow that also didn't stick. I think she would say that she kind of regrets not being more intentional about speaking Cantonese with them. And then we came to Taiwan. Like I said, they didn't want to learn any Mandarin before that. In Taiwan, the primary language is Mandarin. There's quite a few people who can speak Taiwanese, sort of the local dialect. It's similar to Hokkien, which is a dialect of Chinese. But anybody in the big cities who speaks Taiwanese also speaks Mandarin in the big cities. So Mandarin would be the primary language.
It's
Yeah.
always good to have exposure early on because you never know what is going to take off for kids in terms of their interests or their abilities when it comes to languages. It is cool to hear how I think school can be a really important part, like when you're showing up in a new place and building community, the language piece, kids can just soak up. I know it takes time, always easy right at first, but it is a way to give them that exposure early on. If someone is wanting to move abroad, they're also thinking, "How can I make this financially and logistically work?" And you shared with
Mhm.
me that you've launched a franchise endeavor, once you land in Taipei, and you've since grown Anytime Fitness to 2 locations in Taipei and 1 in Malaysia, and more in the works. So, this is a side of entrepreneurship and business that I am not super familiar with. And so
Mhm.
I'd love if you could walk us along that journey, how that originated. I'd love to hear what that's been like for you.
Our background was in investing. We started off with a real estate investment firm where we began, my wife and I began investing in real estate ourselves, and then very quickly we started taking in outside investment from our friends and family. At the time that we did it, we were just very lucky to be doing this at the right time. But that's what we did, and that was what we gained a lot of experience in, was investing in real estate. Eventually, we slowly started investing somewhat into startups, technology startups, and then my wife went and got a certification for venture capital investing, and then she got hired by a VC firm, and she had experience in VC venture capital, which is basically investing into startups and technology companies. So we expanded to that, and that was around the time we were preparing to move to Taiwan. With that sort of context, when we came to Taiwan,
Mhm.
in the beginning, we weren't doing anything. We didn't need to have a job here. We just came over to slowly figure it out and uh, find our footing. And then after 6 months or so, my wife started looking into businesses that she could buy. We started looking at coffee shops, restaurants, things of that nature. We were actually very close to purchasing a coffee shop that was doing really well. And it's just funny to think how everything would be different if we had. But instead, we didn't buy that. And one of the other businesses that we had considered was Anytime Fitness, because there is one location in Taipei already, which was right on the path that we took to go to my younger son's preschool. And so we walked by there every day, and my wife joined. Well, I eventually later joined her at that same gym. And we liked the gym. We liked the atmosphere. And she just took the initiative to reach out to corporate and find out how she can franchise it. And we talked to corporate for a while. We negotiated with them, and then we walked away because the numbers weren't good enough. And then you fast forward about 9-10 months. We still hadn't purchased a business in Taiwan. My wife was still doing diligence on different things. And then we went back to Anytime because we had one of our best friends here in Taiwan. We had gotten to know them well now, and she had just quit her job, and she was like, yeah, let's find out what that's about. So we looked into it again, reached out to Anytime Fitness again, and this time they gave us a really good deal. I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer for us to get started with them. I think what happened was they really hadn't made any progress in those 9-10 months. So they came back to us with a really good proposal, and we took it. We opened the first location. It's the flagship location in Taipei now, in sort of the main center of the city, tourist center as well. And it was doing well. As more or less, it was doing what we expected it to. And then we heard from the Taiwan rep for Anytime that Malaysia is the best country in all of Asia for Anytime Fitness. So I was, oh, really? It's so much better than anywhere else. Okay, so I made it a point to visit every Anytime in Malaysia. But then after our trip to Malaysia, we came back to Taiwan, and suddenly we were like, what if we try to open a gym in Malaysia? I have family there. Maybe they can help us kind of bridge that gap. So we ended up opening a gym there. We're in the process of opening 2 more in Malaysia, and it's been a long journey. It's been a long journey, but we now own the rights to all of Taiwan. We raised a fund to build 12 gyms in Taiwan, and so currently the first one of that fund has opened. So if you count our gym, then that's 2 that we have in Taipei, and then 2 more will be opening in a month and a half, roughly.
Oh, exciting.
And so that in total, it should be 13 for us in Taiwan, and then 3 in Malaysia.
Is the building also being built, or is this
No,
in
we're
some ways
usually
like taking over a different building?
we're usually tenants. There's a good amount of construction, but nothing's built from scratch.
And if someone wanted to start a business in a country that they were not raised in, obviously, like you have some ties with Malaysia, super convenient to have that. Where does someone even start? And I realize this is a giant question, but maybe just like in general, or some principles.
Yeah, I feel like our journey to this point was probably atypical because we weren't intending to do this at all, and we were coming sort of from an investment standpoint, like what could we put our money into and our resources into that would be worthwhile for everyone involved. So that was our mindset, and then we ended up kind of falling backwards into a franchise brand that comes from the U.S., from our country. So having said that, I think I do see a lot of expats who open small businesses that might be like, a restaurant, for example, that's serving food from their home and sharing it with a new community. I feel like that makes sense. And so if there happened to be a brand that you identify strongly with from your home, it wouldn't be a big leap to then, instead of just opening your own small business, actually opening with a brand that has sort of a track record, a business plan, and then is also looking to expand its footprint to another country. I think something like that might line up well. How to do it, I guess it's just a matter of kind of being confident in what the product is. So if it's not something that you think is a good product then or service, then I wouldn't do it. But if you feel like it's something that's really good, that it's worth looking into.
Yes, something that you're passionate about or something you know well, and now you're in a new location and looking at those franchise opportunities because part of
Mhm,
a franchise is that they want to expand too. It
mhm,
seems like it could be a win-win to bring your
mhm.
expertise, your experience, your perspective with a brand that you know, and then you're on the ground doing that, but the franchise, the larger company is obviously supporting in some capacity.
I think we've all sat there thinking, "Oh, this is such a cool place, whatever city you are in, whatever country. Oh, but I wish they had XYZ." So, maybe you're the one to bring that to to the
True.
city or the
Yeah,
country.
there's endless possibilities, perhaps. You mentioned, though, your music. I'd love if you can share a little more about that and where
Yeah.
that started and how that has continued with traveling
Mm.
and settling somewhere new to you and your family to be able to keep up a passion like that.
It's really been amazing and fulfilling for me because so my background is I studied music since I was a little kid, and I was all the way through young adulthood. I actually majored in music, got a master's degree in music. I was pursuing music early in my career, but I kind of gave up on it pretty quickly. I should music is such a vague term, but like I was a classical musician. I was teaching. I was working in management, but then I was also pursuing pop rock music separately on the side. But once my wife and I started getting serious and started our company, I kind of let that fall to the side, and my passion for music just quickly fizzled once we got really in the trenches of building our business. So that was always a regret, like a missed pursuit or something that I didn't really see through to the end. And many years later, over a decade later, once we decided we wanted to live in Taipei, there were a few different routes for a visa for residency that I could try for, and my top choice was to get a gold card in the arts. And I didn't I thought it was 50-50 chance whether I'd get it, but I did an application. I submitted all of the stuff that I had done years ago, and they approved me. So I was invited essentially to come live in Taiwan to pursue the arts. And so it was sort of a a second chance, sort of renaissance to be able to get into music again here in Taiwan. And so that's what I've done more or less just the last 2 years, but it's been awesome. I've gotten so many opportunities that I never did previously in the US. And so I've been performing a lot, been working with a lot of different musicians. I have my own stuff, my own band as well. And I feel very lucky to be where I am now at this stage.
What a cool way to have that music background. And then, like you said, it went to the wayside for a while, as
Yeah.
sometimes those things happen when we're
Yeah.
building lives and businesses and families. And then
Yeah.
to be able to bring that back and have that be one of the access points you had to Taiwan, because the
Mhm.
gold card was residency and a work permit. And basically, that was your entry point to Taiwan. I'm sure there were
Correct.
others that you could have
Yeah.
pursued, but that's a
Yeah.
unique way, right? To be able
Mm.
to access, Gold
Yeah.
Card. Tell me more about that. Like, what other
Yeah.
things would be eligible for that if someone has a background and they want to settle in Taiwan?
It's it's changed a bit. So, like 3, 4 years ago when I was in the middle of doing it and applying and going through that, I was I was quite knowledgeable about all the intricacies, but I know that it's continued to evolve. I believe you can in science and technology, if you have work experience in those areas, then it's something you can consider. If you have a PhD from a well-known university, it has to be top 500 in the world, then you automatically can qualify. There's a handful of other things, other ways to do it. And if you can get the gold card, then you get special treatment in coming over. They give you certain benefits, and it makes things on the whole a bit easier than if you were just moving over on a standard work permit. So it was nice to have that, and that definitely has helped us in certain ways. Um, I will say two things that are a struggle in Taiwan and that I have experienced firsthand, as you kind of know, the past week is the bureaucracy with immigration can be tricky. My first experience with the gold card, super easy. So it's not always that way. And I know some people, it's been no problems, you know. But then I'm in the midst of getting my permanent residency now, and that has been kind of a nightmare. I don't think that's an overstatement. It's been a nightmare. It's been 9 or 10 weeks now, and a lot of back and forth. And I've had to do a lot of running around, getting things, putting information together. And it's just funny because there's a lot of people over the last 3, 4 months who've gone through the same process as me, and it was super easy for them. But for
Goodness.
me, I just got caught up for whatever reason, and then there's a lot of questions going back and forth. And so any day now, supposedly, I'm going to be approved, but I don't know until it actually
Oh,
happens. So
yes.
it's been tricky, and that has affected a lot of stuff that we've been doing with our business and with my music. And then the other aspect that's tough in Taiwan is banking as a foreigner, because they have so many restrictions. So those are two negative aspects of living in Taiwan. A lot of things have been amazing and very convenient, but not these two experiences.
Well, I think it's important to highlight like I said, the challenges that pop up. And it's one of those things when you're going through it, it's really, really frustrating. And then you get to the other side and you kind of forget because I've dealt with Spanish
Yeah.
bureaucracy and it's endless. And then it's kind of over at some point, hopefully with the
Yeah.
outcome that you desire,
Yeah.
of course, too. And you've been traveling around doing well, I mean, once
Mhm.
you get all this squared away, you'll be able to hopefully do some more traveling with the music. And you perform locally as well? What has that
Yeah.
experience been like?
It's awesome. I mean, it's all been new for the most part. I did some performing previously when I was younger, but that wasn't my goal in my first sort of cycle through and pursuing music as a career. I wanted to be a songwriter and composer, and I tried to like be the sort of backbone for somebody else who was on stage and in the spotlight. That was, yeah, that was my experience in my 20s. For whatever reason, I felt like I wanted somebody else to be in the spotlight, not me. This time around, it's been me. I mean, that's just been the easiest way to get everything done, has been, you know, me being on stage, me doing a lot of stuff. And so everything in some way has been new and exciting for me, nerve-wracking and, you know, anxiety inducing, but all of it has been a great experience. And I've grown a ton as sort of the being in situations that were outside my comfort zone. So I've grown a lot in the last 2 years.
What instrument do you play? Or instruments do you play?
Yeah, I guess now at this stage, I'm a pianist, keyboardist primarily, but I also play violin and I play guitar. So there's some bands that I play all those instruments, and then I sing now too. I That was another thing. I didn't necessarily consider myself a singer. I was always comfortable as a backup singer, but now I'm like the front man and lead singer for a lot of stuff. So
That
it's
is so
yeah,
cool.
I've been growing. I've been it's the growth mindset that I didn't understand in my 20s.
Yes, that we can all keep going and learn and grow and adapt. And it's good to model that for kids too. Kids
Yeah.
get to see us putting ourselves out there a little bit. I hope that would you feel comfortable sharing some of like a clip or two that I can include in
Yeah, of
the
course.
that would be
Yeah,
great
of
to
course, of
share
course.
that. And that way, the next time someone is in Taipei, they can see where you're playing and when you're playing. I guess maybe to link it back to Taipei, just to share a little more about maybe the financial, the logistical, like what is
Mm,
a US dollar for that
mhm,
exchange rate? Like if someone wants to spend a month there traveling, seeing some of the best
mm.
sites, what price point would they look at?
So the the trickiest part is the housing piece, and that can make things vary a lot. What I've noticed is that your go-to, which is sort of Airbnb, right, is extremely overpriced in Taiwan or in Taipei, I guess, but maybe generally Taiwan because there's not a lot of options. And so they can price high. It's actually also in a legally gray area. as well. So that's what limits the supply. Beyond the housing part, everything is very affordable. It's just the housing piece that you'd have to solve. So I think there's definitely very affordable hotels. The question is whether those hotel rooms will suit you as a family or as a traveler.
Yes. Your next business adventure should be coming up with that perfect mix of hotel and all that
Yeah,
comes with it, right? Like a
yeah,
24-hour check-in, which sometimes families need, but with the space. And it
yeah,
doesn't need to be luxury. I just need at least a separate space sometimes.
right.
I just feel like there's this missing opportunity for really family-friendly hotels that have space, but are also affordable. I mean, they
Hmm.
exist, but I feel like
Hmm.
this is why people opt for Airbnb though, is
Hmm.
because they are
Hmm.
often these hotels are just exorbitant compared to renting an
Yeah.
Airbnb. But if they could find a way to make it work, I think there is an
Yeah.
opportunity there.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, long-term renting in Taiwan and Taipei is very affordable. For example, our place is probably the top of the top in terms of price, in terms of location. We have a 4-bedroom and we pay 2,100 US. We're in the center of the city. So you can definitely find much cheaper as you go further out. I have friends who have humongous places, like huge, huge, huge. One friend who's not too far from us, like, maybe 30 minutes away, still very much in the city, just on an outskirt area, and he pays under 1,000 US for a humongous place. But like I said, the challenge is if you want to come for 1 month, finding a place to rent that's reasonable for a short time.
So maybe if people get the housing piece squared away, really all the rest of it is going to be very manageable and really easy to get around and explore. So before we wrap up, let's learn a little bit more about you in the lightning round. So,
Mhm.
what is the most unusual food you've ever tried?
Maybe ants or crickets. Believe it or not, that this wasn't far flung area. This was in Texas.
Okay.
It was that South by Southwest, and they had some kind of a food innovation event.
That does not surprise me actually. And one item that you cannot travel without.
I think my phone. I know it's sort of cop
Well,
out
it's
answer, but
so
it
important
has my
though.
entire life in there. So
Yes,
yeah,
very true.
yeah.
What is a favorite place, city, or country?
So,
Is that like
favorite.
picking a favorite kid though?
I can't. Yeah, favorites are so hard. I'll go with something sort of the most recent in our minds kind of place, and that would be Vancouver, Canada. It's my son's favorite city. He said flat out, like, he has
Oh, so cool.
a lot of cities that he likes, but that's his favorite. We love it. We can envision living there someday.
If a family is considering moving abroad or traveling long term, what is a piece of advice that you'd have for them if they're just starting out?
My advice is always to not wait. From based on my experience, I feel like I waited too long, and so yeah, I would say don't be scared and don't wait. It always makes sense to make sure you have a plan in place and do sort of your appropriate kind of preparation and research, but still don't wait just for no reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
just because you're scared or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Don't let the fear be what slows you down. Maybe there's logistical or financial
Right.
hurdles that you need
Right.
to overcome, but not
Right.
the fear itself.
Right.
That's a great piece to end on. I'd like to connect people with you if you're willing to share any ways that people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, of course. So my Instagram for music is Project Maximus. That's the artist name that I use, Project Maximus. And I have a website. It's projectmaximusmusic.com.
I mean, it's great to know that these passions, even if they are pushed to the side a little bit for a while, they can come back and when we have the time and the space to do that. So this has been so awesome to hear more about your life and your adventures in Taipei. So thank you for sharing more about you and your family.
And of course, thanks for having me.
Someday see me when you choose to open your eyes. The world says you're out of my league. I don't care. I'm still willing to wait.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please do me a huge favor and tell a friend or traveling family about the show. And hey, don't miss out on bonus content, behind the scenes, and more on Instagram, Facebook, or Substack. Thanks for tuning in. Go send this episode to a friend. See you next time.